Hello and welcome to the show, Paranormal Fact or Fiction. This is the only show anywhere on the planet where we look to find the mystery from the history, the truth from the scare, the urban myth from the urban miss.
I'm Wesley Johnson. Each week, I will pick a famously haunted location that we're both familiar with, and I will take all the information the internet has to offer, stories, myths, otherwise. But is it fact? Or is it fiction?
I will then use my extensive historical research on every building. I've also paranormally investigated them many, many times with my team, the International Paranormal Society. So we'll find out what's cool and what's bull. I also have with me a bell. We have a bunk bell. So if anything is wrong or any of the facts are missing, I will press the bunk bell. And at the end of the show, we'll add up which was bunk and which was fact. And we should have a score for each individual building. So what haunted location have you found for this episode?
This week, we are going to talk about the Palmer House. So, according to our sources here, Palmer House is a historic hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. It was built in 1901 by Ralph and Christina Palmer.
They did really well, the two of them, to build that on their own.
Didn't need any help.
Her pointing skills were amazing, by the way. Definitely a pioneer woman to be doing that on her own back in the day. Do you know she chopped a cord of wood in the morning and gave birth in the afternoon? 100% true.
Not surprised.
But that is
British?
true. She wasn't British, unfortunately. But that is fact. That was 1901, that building was constructed. So that is true. That's a really good start. And there were extensions made in 1916, although I think that was more putting in a carpet and actually putting some wallpaper up rather than anything extensive. So that's a good start. You've made a good start there, Wesley.
Well, thank you. I worked hard.
I see you've dressed for the occasion. Just got out of bed, I see.
You know? Yeah.
Very impressive.
That's how we do it in this country.
I can tell.
Now, according to this, it says it burned down June 26th, 1900. Is that, being that it was built in 1901, how does that make sense?
It took them that long to clear the debris. The building, the Sauk Center house, was originally a hotel that was built in 1863 by a gentleman named Alexander Moore, and it was an old wooden pioneer construction. One of the things they didn't like about those old buildings was that everything in Sauk Center was suddenly new. There was a sense of modernity. So in 1900, when it burnt down, all of the locals were very happy because they wanted a new building made of brick, and they had a chance to build a resplendent building. But the footprint of that old Sauk Center house, that old wooden pioneer construction, is the same basement, the same river rocks, the same footprint as the current Sauk Center house. They just built straight over the top of the basement. So if you wander down into the basement, you'll actually see the old river rocks from the original construction. But the local population was very happy about this. They had a chance now to have a brand new hotel everyone could be proud of. There is rumours, and you may touch upon this in your research, that everybody was happy in town because it was a brothel and a place of ill repute. But that's not the case. This was actually the citizens wanting a better building, wanting a sense of bricks and electricity and all the things that that brings.
Okay, so there's a couple renditions of it and then it became...
That's correct, yes. And if you're actually in the lobby of the Palmer House building, there are photographs on the wall to show the old original construction that was wooden, and you can see where it sits over the top. This is a building I'm very familiar with, actually. I've investigated this building probably more times than any other building in America. When I first arrived here, you imagine the plane wheels touched at Minneapolis Airport. I was given a taxi. I did this investigation at the Sauk Center house. So I'm driving through the barren landscape of the Midwest Plains, the type of place...
Hasn't changed much.
Well, they were putting electric poles up on I-94 and it was actually improving the landscape.
Still working on those today, probably.
Well, all the way along.
Amidst all the road construction.
Well, I understand there's 4 seasons in Minnesota.
There is.
There is snow, snow, snow and road construction.
Correct.
But the snow does fill in the potholes, so it's all good. So I arrived in Sauk Center. I've only been in the country 2 hours. I instantly want to investigate and go down in the basement to see what everyone's talking about for this historic building. And I was shown the downstairs rooms in the basement with all the old river and field rocks. And the first thing that happened to me in this country on a paranormal investigation is somebody shouted, a ghost shouted in my ear, "F off Limey." So I thought, welcome to America. So I do know the basement is original and the building was built on top. So those things are true. An extension may be an exaggeration, so I'm going to linger over the bunk bell without actually, you know, following through there. There is some truth to all of that. That's a good start. That's excellent.
Yeah, I like it. I think we're rolling.
Very impressive, sir.
But just kind of a side note, because you got me thinking. So is it fair to say that most of the activity maybe from the basement, since that's the same foundation that was there through both the renditions? Is that?
I certainly think there's an element that the people that were there beforehand, like any building, does the ghost haunt the space or does it haunt the building? And I've done research on this. In fact, in Jackson, in Minnesota, there's a pioneer village, and I've done lots of investigating in that village. And the people that own the buildings and own the houses still haunt them, even though they've been brought to that pioneer village from 30, 40 miles away. So if you imagine a building on the back of a semi going down the street towards the museum, the ghosts are hanging onto the doors and windows.
They're bumping around.
Yeah, like a sheet in the wind.
As they hit all those potholes going down I-94.
How many times have you seen a sheet in the road and thought, there's a poor ghost who's happened to lie there because the building it was hanging onto was going too fast? But that is true. And I like investigating hotels and I like investigating these types of buildings because hotels are a microcosm of society. If you think about it, you're born in a hotel, you can be conceived in a hotel, you live in a hotel, people stay in them, people die in hotels. If you go to a big hotel, the manager will tell you that at least a couple of times a year they have to call in the coroner because the maid knocks on the door, opens the door, and there's someone who's died. So I always think that if there's an alien in a spaceship and it wants to pull something with it and take it away, taking a hotel would be a really good thing to do because what it is to be human, the whole of humanity, is experienced in a hotel, if that makes sense. So there's lots of hauntings there just because it's like a railway station, people going in and out. I will add to that as well that the most dangerous occupation that you could have in the Victorian period in the 19th century was to be a desk clerk at a hotel because people came from all over America on the newly built railroads. The first person they meet is the desk clerk. So if you think of somewhere like Bradshaw in Wisconsin, they went through 3 desk clerks at the Bradshaw Hotel in a single year because people would suddenly arrive with scarlet fever, beriberi, diphtheria, all of these fabulous illnesses brought from all over America, and the first person they meet is the desk clerk.
Because they're the frontliners.
Yeah, so if you think about the show, you know, Deadliest Job or The Most Dangerous Job, it was a desk clerk at a hotel. So you're 100% correct. I'm wanting to hit the bell, but we've not had an opportunity yet.
So
that
far
is
we're
true.
hitting on the facts.
You can't complain, can you?
Fiction
You leave with more than you arrive with. This is a joy, isn't it?
I'm having fun.
We're going to ruin it now.
Can we move on?
This is where we ruin it. Go on, let's have
Off to a
it.
good start, right down the hill.
Nothing else to come now but disappointment and heartache.
Hey, well, we put the right foot forward.
Nice.
So moving along, so it's said that this place was kind of the state of the art for its time. It's known for being one of the first buildings in Sauk Center. And I actually remember reading somewhere in most of the country even, but one of the first buildings to have electricity.
Again, I want to get in here. This is winking at me.
I think we want to hear you hit the bell, but I'm glad that so far the internet hasn't let us down.
I'm going to hold back for the moment. That is true. It was built in 1901. It was only the second building in the history of Minnesota to have electricity. They also built it with running toilets, running water, lavatories, because up until that point, you'd have to go into the basement, do your business on the basement floor, and then someone would come along once a week and shovel all of that out.
Clean it up.
So you don't want to be necessarily rifling through...
No wonder there's so much negative energy in the basement.
This is true, yes. There's lots of people straining down there, is what would have happened back in the day. They had stained glass windows as well, and they were imported from Vienna in Austria, and the local population thought that they were building a church because they'd never seen stained glass windows in any building ever that wasn't a church. And I will add, I've investigated this building more than any other, maybe 100 times. I used to live in Sauk Centre. I lived opposite the Palmer House. I used to give historic tours. My team's investigated in there with guests. We've done events there. All of the historical information that's in the lobby, I put there because I was actually the president of the Sauk Centre Historical Society. I've actually written 2 books here, Tales from a Pioneer Town, which is the earliest history.
Off a little bit?
Why not? let's plug that.
Yeah.
That has an entire chapter on the Palmer House, which would have been the Sauk Centre house back in the day.
Is this
from
what?
1863.
Yeah, a couple of them, right?
And then the ghosts of the Palmer House is in the book Mysterious Minnesota. I can highly recommend
We'd
them.
also like to call out that Adrian designed the artwork for these books as well.
That is
Part
true.
that I'm most impressed with.
And I can do my own plumbing as well, so that's good news for everybody. I've read them all twice. I can highly recommend them.
Whoop.
You've done that on purpose because you wanted to
I just wanted to hear the bell.
We're working, we're up and running.
There we go.
Again, all true. Very modern building, stained glass windows, lots of pipe work that wasn't normal for the period. And again, people tell me it used to be a brothel. There is no way you would have an expensive building like that and it would be a brothel. This was for businessmen, this was for generals from the Civil War. After the Civil War, they stayed in this building when they went to investigate faults up in the north. Only the very wealthy could stay in this building.
Sure.
So it wouldn't be a brothel because you wouldn't afford to be able to go there. Also, it's in the middle of Main Street, on the main crossroads, north, south, east and
So
west.
everybody's going to see it.
Everyone's going to see that. Look, there's Mr. Johnson. He's going to the brothel. No one tell his wife. I'm sure they existed. These places did exist.
His wife is probably already there.
Wow, controversial.
You know? Yeah.
But ultimately, these buildings, they were brothels, of course, because it's a very patriarchal, masculine society. Places
Sure.
like further north, for example, like Leech Lake, you know, that was a lumberjack society and it would have been all men. So I'm sure these buildings did exist, but not on the crossroads of Main Street where everyone can see you going in and out. There's no historical evidence. Through all of my research, I have turned every single page of the Sauk Centre Herald from the 1860s onwards. It was very boring, very laborious. I stood there turning every page because it's a lifestyle decision. And there's not a single article, when it puts down everything criminal that's happened, about that being a brothel. That is bunk. It's never been a brothel.
We heard the bell.
We're off and running.
We're doing it. It's going. It's happening.
We're happening. That's not true. It isn't a brothel. It's not a Wild West town. It's a very boring Irish German dairy farming community, I'm afraid to say. It was so boring.
So it's my people's town.
Yes, perfect. There you go. You probably know them very personally.
Hey, right there.
You're going to show me pouring.
There's the mark.
Lovely.
It's a place I would have frequented if I could have afforded it.
Yes. They actually had a vault in the basement. Because the businessmen stayed there, they wanted their wares to be safe, and there was a vault you could lock and a cage to stop their, you know, sales, their product.
Like they stayed in the vault, or that's just where they put their...
Stolen. Well, I'm sure some people might encourage that.
Okay.
But they went down there to put in their wares. If they were a knife and fork salesman, they'd have their samples and they'd lock them up in the vault. So there's evidence that it was businessmen. There's evidence that generals stayed there. General Sheridan, General Grant stayed there, and various others when they were going north. It was for the posh, the privileged, and the rich. Certainly wasn't a brothel, certainly wasn't a kind of establishment that would be low level for sure.
Okay. Interesting. Just a walking encyclopedia of history.
Yes, well, I made the mistake of reading some books when I was younger, rather than watching WrestleMania.
Catch up with the rest of us. We wait till it turns into a movie first.
Perfect.
So far we're doing pretty good. The internet is holding up.
It's doing.
We got
well.
3 points. I will tally the points, as you said, to know when the internet is full of shit and when it's not. So far we got 3 marks for fact and 1 for fiction.
We're doing very well. It surprises me, but we still have plenty of time.
There's plenty of time for the internet to let us down.
Clutch defeat from the jaws of victory.
All right. Moving on, we're going to talk about the young Sinclair Lewis. American ignorance. I thought that was a woman. It's not. Sinclair Lewis worked as during 2 summers as the desk clerk. So we're talking about the desk clerk.
That is true. He did.
He said he later used it as the model for the Minniemashie House in his 1920 novel Main Street, set in the town modeled in turn of Sauk Centre.
All those things are true. I'm not sure he worked there for 2 summers. His dad was a surgeon and a doctor called Edwin, and he worked in the surgery across the road. There was the corner drugstore, literally across the road from the Palmer house on the other corner. And his dad worked upstairs of the pharmacy, and he was friends with the Palmers.
Okay.
So they pretty much said, can you get my son a job?
Yeah.
He's only 14. And the Palmer said, sure, he can be a desk clerk, he can be a bellboy, he can take the suitcases up and down the stairs.
He may have worked there much longer than the 2
Well, he
summers.
kind of got fired, actually. He wasn't very good at his job, and he was very lazy. Apparently, he leant on a cigar case in the lobby and broke the glass. And so the Palmers weren't very happy about that. He used to spend all of his time writing his books when he should have been working. He was very kind of, as all teenage boys are, he would bump into things, he was clumsy. There was an occasion when he had to wake somebody up. One of the guests needed to be woken up to catch the train, and he fell asleep or he forgot, and the gentleman missed his train, and that was the final straw, and they fired him. He was gone. So it wasn't a very long-lived situation, but during the summer he did work there as a young child. Now, I will tell you an interesting story. I was working in the Palmer House doing tours, doing the history of the building, and putting together all the displays they have in the lobby there. They've had some flooding issues. In Minnesota, you have issues with the weather. You know, it's like the sea cut into vertical strips when it starts to rain, right?
Putting it lightly.
So I'm getting used to this. This is unique for me. And so they had a lot of bad weather, and the water, it's a very old building. Some of the water came from the roof and trickled down through the building.
Sure.
While I was there, a gentleman came in who was an architectural surveyor, and he had a $33,000 infrared camera, and it was the camera that you can see through walls. So he could see where the water had damaged everything. Now, I found out there was a rumour that Sinclair Lewis, when he was writing his stories when he was 14, found a brick in the basement, and when he removed that river rock, he put his embryonic writings behind that river rock. And there was always the rumour that if you look long enough and hard enough in the basement, and it's a huge footprint, it's a massive basement. Sure. If you found a loose brick, you could remove that and you might find some Sinclair Lewis writing that's never been seen before. You and me could be rich. We could go on vacation, we can publish Sinclair Lewis novels that have never been seen before, and we'd be very wealthy.
I like how that sounds.
It's great, right?
I think we should do that.
Well, here's the key.
Tomorrow.
Every time I went down in the basement, I would touch a couple of rocks just to see if anything moved. This gentleman had an IR camera and was an architectural surveyor and engineer. I said to him, if there's any loose rocks in the basement, would you be able to tell me if you look through that camera? And he said, yes. And I thought, we're going to be rich. I've already spent the money.
We're done.
I know what car I'm going to buy. I know what kind of house I want. It's already been bought in my mind.
Yeah.
We climbed down the stairs, which are very uneven, of course. It feels like you're drunk and you have to cling onto the rail. We stand in the middle of the basement. He turns the IR camera on. He's very slowly panning around the room. Painfully slowly. Mm-hmm. It's taking minutes, and I'm sitting there spending all this money. I then, at the end of it, he puts his camera down and I say to him, so which bricks were loose? And he said, all of them. The basement was from 1863. All the bricks were loose, so I didn't get a chance to spend the money. But that is 100% true. Sinclair Lewis did work there. That is true.
Okay.
The town didn't like him. But now they have a Sinclair Lewis week, which is ironic because he wanted to leave as quickly as possible. He didn't like the town, and it was the Minniemashie house. This is 100% true.
We'll give that a point to fact.
Yes, I'm desperate to ring the bell. We're doing very well here.
How did that? Just another question though. How did that affect relationship with Dad? Because you said he was friends with the Palmers.
Sure.
Did that cause any ripple effects, or were they pretty much, he's a nit?
The Palmers had long since gone. By the way, Sinclair Lewis wrote that book in 1920, and he won the first ever literature Nobel Prize for literature, first American, for a series of books he'd written.
So he wasn't useless after all.
No, he did very well. He was an alcoholic, though, and he actually lived with the Pope in Rome for a short while, and he died in Rome, but he got the last laugh. Because when they brought his ashes back from Rome, all of the locals were in the local cemetery, Greenway Cemetery in Sauk Centre, and they were all wearing their best clothes, and they scattered his ashes, and apparently back to Minnesota weather. There was a big gust of wind, and everyone got covered in Sinclair Lewis, is what happened.
Another point for Minnesota. We're gonna have to make a third column over here.
It is illegal to fire a gun in Minnesota in a cemetery. What kind of shenanigans are you getting up to in this state that they're taking away all your fun by putting in health and safety regulations? But it's the only state in America you can't fire a gun in a cemetery.
How is it that I've lived in Minnesota my whole life and you're not even from the country? You knows more about it than I do.
I've had the benefit of reading some books. That's where we are, sir.
That's why we're here.
Good times.
All right. Well, let's move into a little bit about the activity. So
Sure.
You've got some experience.
Yeah, we're here
with
to
the
do
activity.
paranormal activity.
Yeah, a
for
little
sure.
paranormal. Many of the guests and employees have claimed to have seen apparitions of a little boy that's believed to be a boy who died of the flu. Doesn't specify the flu, but just the flu.
That's a little bit of bunk. I'm going to go for it, but I'll grab it early so it doesn't ring out there.
I like the ring out.
I did find you keep me. There's another one there. I don't want to disappoint you in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
I like the idea. There is a boy that allegedly died there. I looked through all the newspapers. In 1868, a little 5-year-old boy did fall down the stairs and split his skull open. It didn't say whether he died or not, but I did find a newspaper article that kind of backs that up. He was the son of a gentleman named Professor Sands, who was doing lectures around the town and around Minnesota. So I did find historical research to kind of back that up, but it didn't say whether he died or not. But anyone who sees a little boy on the stairs, even if that's trauma, that can leave a residual haunting. Do you see what I mean? He hasn't got to have died. Just the fact that he cracked his skull open was sufficient to mean that those stairs are haunted. So and you remember, those are the stairs from the previous hotel
been there the whole time.
that would have been in a different place. So again, I reluctantly rang the bell, but there's a glimmer of real in there. It's
a little bit of truth.
There's a little bit of truth, a small amount. Perhaps you can give that half.
Okay.
Half
we can do
on
that.
each side.
We can do that. We'll do that. We'll give it 0.5. I think the internet has got a pretty good victory so far.
Yes.
So it's,
Well,
it's time to even the playing field a little
I
bit.
think now we're getting into the ghosts and spirits. We may score some points for the bunk side of things.
One more here before we really dive into the shit. During probation, we were told that the owners would sell liquor in the basement. And it's also said that there are tunnels in the basement that lead to other buildings around town to help transport said liquor.
Oh, man, that's true as well.
Damn it.
The tunnels have been...
Whose side are we on here?
The tunnels have been blocked up. You can see where they were blocked up.
Okay.
I have walked the entire length of Main Street in Sauk Centre from one block to the next. You can go through every single property, all the way through each store, just solely using the basement. I think those tunnels were originally put there because there was a steam heating system and it heated the entire town up.
Yeah.
So those tunnels weren't built for any recidivist reasons like prohibition. They were there for a heating system, I think. And a lot of tunnels in and around Minnesota in properties that all interconnect was a steam heating system.
Okay.
When those tunnels were there, of course, they're very useful to have because we already mentioned there was a pharmacy across the road. So if during the Prohibition you want to make illegal alcohol, you have the pharmacy with all the stills, all of the chemicals. You have the hardware store and the dry goods store on the other corner. And of course, you then have all the ingredients. So you've got the ingredients, the equipment, and the ability to sell them in the hotel or within this tunnel complex. So that would make sense. And all those buildings were interlinked by tunnels, and they're all blocked up now. You can't walk through them.
Okay.
Again, I wanted to bunk it. It's true. That is true.
Well, let's talk about. So we got 5 minutes left of the 30 minutes. Okay.
Well, we're going to go over.
We can keep going with it.
I just like this is good fun. I'm happy just to talk.
I like it. I'm going to hit some of these some of the activity ones. So apparently, room 17 has been haunted by a prostitute named Lucy, who worked in the Sauk Center house brothel before it burned down in 1990. She especially she had a thing for men. Clearly. Fact or fiction?
She's getting paid. It's not a brothel. It's never been a brothel. This is not a pioneer. This is not a pioneer town in the terms of Wild West. It's a boring, as I said, Irish, German.
Maybe there was just Lucy, and maybe she was just a whore. Hey, it could be a book title.
All things
Lucy
can
the whore.
happen. Well, I'll take that and we'll write a book on that.
Copywritten.
That's the way to go. The problem I have with the third floor of the Palmer House is the fact that if these hauntings were due to what took place on the hotel that was there previously, the Palmer House is a 3-storey hotel. The building that was there beforehand, the Sauk Centre House, was only 2 stories. So anything that haunts on the top floor would have been above the skyline of the previous hotel. So it can't come from that. There was no 3rd story. So straight away, anything that happens on the top floor would have to come from the Palmer House and not the Sauk Centre House, because there was a story difference. It just wouldn't happen. It wasn't a brothel. There was no 3rd story involved with the previous property. Whether there was some sort of illicit kind of system going on there, I can't say, but I never found any evidence of that in my research. I think the reason they call her Lucy was that they have Ma and Pa paranormal teams and psychics that perhaps aren't on the top of their game, and they would come in every weekend. The owner of the house, Kelly Freeze, is an amazing person. She's very generous. She lets people investigate the property all weekend, but you don't know the validation of those people. You don't know how skilled they are. So if someone back in the day said, you know, there's a woman here called Lucy, where are they getting that information from? How good is that psychic? Anyone can walk into any building and claim anything is there without anything to back that up. And that room is haunted. There are things that go on there, doors slam, you get cold chills. But whether it's a prostitute called Lucy, I would say that's
seems like a lot of, You
stopped me mid-bunkage.
I'm going to give it to you.
Don't stop my flow, man. There we go.
We're going to debunk that one. I think they're painting it like hard facts, and basically what you're saying is there's a lot of could-be's, maybes, but we don't necessarily know. But you know it wasn't a brothel.
It was never a brothel, and I know for a fact the previous building was only 2 stories. Anything that haunts the 3rd floor would have been above the roof and skyline of the previous building that they claim that comes from.
Sure.
That's a good bunk, though. I like that.
Yeah. Well, speaking, you mentioned Miss Freeze.
Yes.
And I want to hit on something that I thought was interesting. So, according to this, a stranger told her about a dream that guided her to where she claims she dug up what looked like rib bones in the basement, put them in a box, and when she returned for them, the box disappeared.
That is true. A lady did have a dream and did guide Kelly Freeze to the bones, and she dug them up and they disappeared the following day. I have also dug those bones up. If you go on YouTube, I originally dug those bones up in 2008, and there's a video of me digging them up, and you'll see that. It's above the kitchen. This is the dirt floor of the basement, and the kitchen's above. All the bones that were accessed were pork and chicken bones and animal bones. So they threw garbage into the basement from the kitchen. Okay. If they were human bones, that would now be a crime scene. Right. And that would all be fenced off. The police would be involved. There'd be forensics, and the whole thing would be a crime scene. So just the fact it's never been a crime scene would suggest that that's kitchen bones from the cooks from
And those
above.
are the bones you think you found. So nothing from the evidence you pulled had any evidence of being human remains?
No, if they were human remains, we've just uncovered a murder site or a grave, and the police would then have to be involved by default. The bones I found, and you can watch the video of this from 12 years ago, the ones I found in the basement that I dug up were kitchen remains. Okay. It was rubbish and garbage thrown in the basement. Like I said, people would go down there and do their business. They would also throw all the kitchen stuff down there as well. I'm going to give that a firm bunk, sir.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of good stuff. I mean, I think we have a pretty evenly keeled checkboard here of fact and fiction.
I'm quite surprised, actually. I thought there'd be a lot more rubbish on the internet, so I'm kind of surprised by that.
I am too. I'm kind of surprised by that too. But, you know, hey, we got some credible sources, and that's always a good thing. Tell me a little bit about the smoky apparitions. I read a lot about smoky apparitions.
One of the best contacts paranormally I had in this building, I was standing in the bar, had all the equipment running. All of a sudden, all the equipment went nuts. The EMF meters were going off. I was getting spikes on the static meter. Everything was lighting up like Christmas tree lights. And I felt there was something coming. If you do enough paranormal investigations, you get a sense that the energy's changed, the atmosphere has changed. And I had a film crew with me as well. All of a sudden, a smoky apparition appeared behind the bar with me, probably 6 feet away, and it was humanoid. It almost looked like the cigar smoke or the back end of a school bus when you first turn the ignition on, that really dirty, thick smoke.
Did it have any odor to it?
It didn't, no, but it was kind of moving towards me. It started walking towards me. Okay. So imagine a humanoid figure made of cigar smoke walking towards you. And I had that moment that you may have experienced as well, where you think, what am I going to do? You know, because you wait all your life to see these apparitions. What you're not going to do is run away.
Right.
So I kind of stood my ground, but I did clench my fists, kind of, you know, steadied myself.
In case you had to punch the smoke.
Yes, we
Maybe
wanted
there's
to
enough form there.
punch the cigar. You could disperse the cigar. Yes, and another ghost has been earthed.
Yeah.
You owe me $100. Ghostbusters. So ultimately it came towards me, and it looked like on Star Trek, where they can't get someone in the transporter properly and they're fading in and out. Mm-hmm. Joe, where Scotty's messing around. It had that quality about it, and I stepped back to give it room. It reappeared a second time, and we were standing eyeball to eyeball facing one another with a ghost. And that was a remarkable encounter. Al Tingley was the manager of this building in the 1970s. He wrote a book in 1984 called On the Corner of Main Street about his experiences in the hotel. And several months later, I was reading chapter 9 of that book, and he said he'd seen that smoky apparition walking along the corridor of the first floor. And even now, it brings the hairs on the back of my neck up, that he recognised that and saw that, and I corroborated that on what I saw.
I think that's some of the best evidence when two people can experience the exact same thing without ever having talked about it before.
With a 20-year, 30-year gap between each. And I turned around to the film crew and I said to them, did you see that? And they were like... So I assume that's the international sign for yes, we saw that as well.
Confirmed. Fantastic. Well, I don't know about you. I think we hit a good bunch of equally, equally credible information.
I was very impressed. I just want to add that Cole Younger, the famous outlaw from the Jesse James Cole Younger gang, stayed there as well. And I read Carlisle Palmer's diary. He died in the 1960s, but he was a small 8-9-year-old boy back in 1903. And he got tucked into bed by Cole Younger. He came downstairs of the Palmer house, and I read this in Carlisle Palmer's diaries, and he said he never had to buy a drink in town ever again because he was the man that was tucked into bed by Cole Younger, one of the most notorious outlaws in American history and the leader of the Jesse James gang. So you think we're doing
bedfellow.
We got about half and half there, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty evenly killed. Let's run a tally, shall we?
Do you need help with that, or are you okay?
Us Americans are sometimes okay at math.
When you run out of fingers, let me know.
Okay. So I'm going to give a fact check for the smoky apparitions.
Yes, that is true.
That was true. So let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the fact.
Yep.
And we are sitting at 4 confirmed bunks.
4 confirmed bunks.
We kind of split the difference on a couple, but I think overall fact wins this round.
That's awesome. That's more than I expected. That's a really good start. Don't forget to join us next time for another episode of Paranormal Fact or Fiction. We are the only paranormal show anywhere in the world to bunk or fact all of the internet information. I hope you join us again next time, and remember, be interested and interesting. Goodbye.